Hello and welcome to the first lecture on Chapter 13, Personality. I'm really excited about this chapter. This is my favorite topic and it's actually my field of expertise. I specialize in the study of temperament and personality. I hope you will find it as interesting as I do. Most psychologists study how people are similar. I am fascinated by how people are different. So my focus has always been examining what are called individual differences. So in this chapter, we're going to look at twin studies and adoption studies. We're going to talk about the genetics of personality. We're going to look at different temperaments. And we'll look at how, we'll look at trait theories and the assessment of traits. And we'll also look at some personality and temperament ideas with non-human animals. So personality is defined as a person's characteristic thoughts, emotional responses, and behaviors. Some personality theorists go with much more holistic theories of personality. I'm a trait theorist, and most personality psychologists are trait theorists. So a personality trait is a part of the personality. I think of personality as a puzzle. And a trait is one piece of the personality puzzle. So a trait is a pattern of thought, emotion, and behavior that is relatively consistent over time and across situations. And as we get further into the chapter, we'll look at specific trait theories. So Gordon Allport, one of the founders of the field of personality psychology, gave a classic scientific definition of personality. He defines personality as the dynamic organization within the individual of those psychophysical systems that determine the individual's characteristic behavior and thought. And that's still the definition we go with today. And I really like that Allport, in the 1930s, identified the physical nature of personality. Personality and temperament is not just psychological, it's biological. And it's our biology and our psychology working together that gives us our self, our concept of self. Personality is an organized, coherent whole. So, when you think about a jigsaw puzzle, that picture is an organized and coherent whole. You look at that, and you've got this beautiful picture. Now, that picture is made up of pieces. It's made up of puzzle pieces. But the fact that there's pieces to that puzzle doesn't undermine the fact that that solved puzzle is a coherent whole. So the self, when we're talking about personality, we're talking about the self. This organized whole is dynamic in that it is goal-seeking, it's sensitive to contexts, and it's adaptive to the environment. We're going to talk a lot about the interaction of personality and the person's environment in this chapter. So personality is something that gives us the ability to be adaptive to our environment. It also helps us to be sensitive to particular contexts that we encounter within our environment. Personality gives us flexibility while still maintaining consistency. By emphasizing psychophysical systems, Allport brought together two ideas. He highlighted the mental nature of personality, so that's the psycho part, and he recognized that personality arises from basic biological processes, which is the physical part. And personality theorists have been researching the duality of the self ever since. There is overwhelming evidence that nearly all personality traits have a genetic component. You are born who you're going to be, but you have flexibility, and that's where the environment comes in. So I'm going to tease that apart a lot in this chapter, but you are genetically predisposed to be who you become. Psychologists do, especially in personality, we do a lot of twin studies. We study identical twins, fraternal twins, and non-twin siblings. And we do this because this allows us to look at the role of genetics in the environment. So identical twins have identical genetics. Their DNA is identical at birth. Fraternal twins are basically non-twin siblings that are just born at the same time. Now this highlights they're different than identical twins because they don't share the same DNA, but they're still born at the same time like identical twins are. So unlike non-twin siblings, fraternal twins come into the world with someone else. They don't come into the world as a single child. They come into the world with a buddy. And so that gives us a little piece of information about the environment right there. And then non-twin siblings gives us even more information about the environment. Now, twin studies have subsequently found that the genetic influence accounts for about half of the variance or half of the differences between individuals for all personality traits. Genetics is much more powerful than I think the average person assumes when it comes to personality and temperament. So now I would like you to go to Moodle, and in the folder titled Chapter 13, Personality Lecture Videos, please watch Child Temperament, How We Start to Become Ourselves. Well, welcome back. I hope you liked that video. I really do like that video. I think the speaker did a really, really great job of explaining how no child, whether an identical twin, fraternal twin, or non-twin sibling, is raised in an identical home. No sibling, regardless, identical twin, fraternal twin, or non-twin sibling, is raised in an identical home. So my sister and I are 21 months apart. We're very close in age. And as the speaker was talking about how, if you ask parents, they'll say, we parent our children exactly the same. And if you ask the children, they will just roll their eyes and say, no, you don't. And like the speaker said, it's somewhere in the middle. My sister and I differ a lot on extroversion. She's very, very, very extroverted, and I'm very, very introverted. I'm very reserved. And I'm the eldest child. So I came into the world, and my parents have this nice, friendly, quiet, reserved little girl. And then Lori comes into the world. Boom. The world knew. Lori comes into a room and everyone knows it. Even now, in middle age, everyone knows when Lori's arrived. And that's a good thing. But we had to be parented very differently. But every child has to be parented very differently. We are not the same. Siblings can share a lot of similarities, but you cannot parent two personalities the same way. It just doesn't work. Now, identical twins do receive more similar treatment from their parents than other siblings. And personality theorists do wonder if that could explain some of the similarity we see in personality with identical twins, because identical twins do show more similarity in personality than fraternal twins and non-twin siblings. We think that that's because they share identical DNA at birth. But they also, because they're identical, they are parented more similarly than if they were not identical. So your textbook has this great graphic looking at correlation on temperament traits and the differences between identical twins and fraternal twins. So I'd like you to take a look at that as you're reading. We also, as psychologists, do a lot of adoption studies because that gives us another piece of the puzzle. It takes out the role of genetics completely. What has been found is that children who are not biologically related and who are raised in the same household as adopted siblings tend to be no more alike in personality than any two strangers. And the personalities of adopted children bear no significant relationship to those of the adoptive parents. We cannot ignore the power of genetics when it comes to who we are, when it comes to the development of self. We are not just the products of our environment, and that is a good thing. Findings do suggest that parenting style might have relatively little impact on personality. But little doesn't mean no impact. There are small correlations in personality among siblings that might imply that parenting style has little effect, but this doesn't mean that parents are unimportant. Parents are critical. But parents don't make us who we are. We come into the world predisposed to be who we're going to be. Yes, our environment helps shape us as well, and our parents are part of our environment. But we are not the product of our parents. Now, similarities in personality between biological siblings and between children and their biological parents seem to have some genetic components. So genes predispose us to have certain personality traits associated with behavioral tendencies. We come into this world with a blueprint of who we will become. Now, in most cases, researchers note that the influence of multiple genes that interact independently with the individual's environment to produce general dispositions. We bring our genetics into the world, and with those predispositions, we interact with our environment, and we shape our environment, which then interacts with our personality, and we're shaped by it. It's a really dynamic dance, and we'll talk about that more. Now, evidence suggests that genes can be linked with some specificity to personality traits. There's a specific gene that regulates one specific type of dopamine receptor. Dopamine makes you feel good. And that gene has been associated with the trait called novelty seeking. But any links between specific genes and specific aspects of personality appear to be very, very small. We're never going to be able to identify this gene does this, and this gene does that, and this gene does this for the self. We can't. Now, each person experiences different circumstances that may cause epigenetic changes and the selective expression of certain genes. Okay, I'm about to get cut off.